Who wouldn't want to visit the most magical place on earth during the most wonderful time of the year? On the website Trip Savvy, in the article entitled Christmas at Walt Disney World, which was updated in 2017, author Susan Rowan helps us see what it takes to transform Walt Disney into the magical Christmas wonderland that it becomes. She says that they use 15 miles of garland, 8.5 million lights, and 1,300 Christmas trees to decorate the property. Christmas season at Walt Disney is not only the most magical and wonderful time of the year, it's also the busiest time of year. That's why it's very important, if you plan to travel to Disney during the Christmas season, that you pre-plan, make a more detailed plan, and make your reservations as soon as possible. Let's look at the pre-planning stage and what that entails. When pre-planning, you can start this process up to a year or more in advance of your trip. During this time, you're going to do things like picking your dates and deciding on lodging. Choosing your dates sounds simple enough, right? Well, the Christmas season at Disney is much like the Christmas season at your local mall. It's going to start in November and go through January, which gives you several options for travel dates. I would suggest using Disney's crowd calendar, which can be found at undercovertourist.com. This is a website updated annually that analyzes crowd patterns at Walt Disney. You have to decide what's most important to you about the dates that you're going to travel. Do you wish to travel at a time where the park will be less crowded and you can still enjoy the Christmas festivities? If so, undercovertourist.com suggests to travel between the dates of November 26th through December 14th. If being there on Christmas Day or New Year's Eve is very important to your family, Doug Ingersoll, in his book The Complete Guide to Walt Disney World, warns not to assume that having a ticket will get you into the park. During Christmas Day and New Year's Eve, the park reaches capacity, which is something to consider when choosing your dates. Next, you need to decide on your lodging. Are you going to stay on property or off property? There's pros and cons to both, and I encourage you to do your research before making that decision. After you have a pre-plan in place, you're now ready to move on to the next step. Charles Swindoll says the difference between something good and something great is the attention to detail. This is the part in your trip where you truly can make your trip go from being good to being great. This is where you add your details to your plan. I would suggest downloading the My Disney Experience app to help you during this part of your planning. This app has lots of good information on it. It provides you with information on things such as show schedules, rides or attractions that are closed to refurbishment. It also gives you character meet and greet times. The way I planned our trip is I downloaded the app and then I also printed off maps of each park when planning my day at the park. The next slide will help you see what I'm talking about. If you see, this is a map of Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom. I drew a red line on this map to make a chronological pathway through the park. This way I know when making my plan, I need to choose times to do things that make sense based on my location in the park, versus choosing to do something in Fantasyland and then jumping over into Adventureland and jumping back to Tomorrowland and then over to Frontierland. If you tour the park in that manner, you're going to spend most of your time fighting crowds and walking back and forth, and you won't get the most bang for your buck during your time that you're there. I encourage you to sit down and figure out a pathway that makes sense and pick things that follow that pathway. In her book, 500 Tips for Walt Disney World, published in 2014, Jennifer Marks says that the way to get the most out of your time at Walt Disney World is to have a plan and stick to a schedule. Once you've made your plan and your schedule, you're now ready to book your reservations, and you want to be sure you do this as soon as possible. Dining reservations open as early as 180 days or 6 months prior to your travel date. You need to be sure that you've made all your decisions and have all your plans written down and ready. Once these dining reservations open, they close or fill up incredibly fast. I'm talking within 3 to 5 minutes of opening. That's why having a plan is so important. You also want to be sure that you make your FastPass reservations in advance. If you're staying on property, you have 60 days in advance to do that. If you're not staying on property, you get 30 days in advance to do that. These also go very quickly once they open, so be sure you have your plan made and in front of you in order to book these reservations. If you pre-plan, make a more concrete plan, and make your reservations as early as possible, you're sure to conquer Disney during not only the most wonderful time of year, but also the busiest time of year.